So thanks again, and it's good to see uh, some faces I know and some new ones as well. And I'm calling in tonight from Manhattan, where I'm in the 10th week of lockdown and the second week of riots, and calculated today that the 22nd week of the Ideal Parents Protocol. So I want to talk a little bit about that practice and just be really upfront with my agenda, and what I really would like is to convince you to do this practice, and that's really about it. And I'm going to be starting a group based around that practice that we'll get a chance to do tonight, this Sunday. So um, you're all welcome to join if this feels like it'll work for you. And the reason I want you to do this, or to convince you to do this, is that I've been spreading it far and wide with people I'm working with clinically and with my friends. And I really can't believe the results. And the results are all over the map, and they're quite um, sneaky in the sense that um, it seems like the longer the practice is done, the deeper it goes, but also kind of the broader it goes in terms of what it uncovers and what it reveals to us about the ego conditioning and conditions beyond the ego. And so um, I want to challenge you to do it. And I'll warn you that I think it's a difficult practice. I think it's a very challenging practice. And it's one of those, classic you get out of it what you put into it kind of a thing. It's not a quick fix by any means, but it seems to go deep. And um, so the group I'm proposing will be 5 weeks long, beginning this Sunday, and it's primarily a practice group. The bulk of the course will be actually doing the practice on your own between the sessions. And then we'll come back and I will present just a little bit each week on attachment theory as taught to us by Daniel P. Brown, who actually gave us the Ideal Parents protocol. And so the greater contributions of the course will be us sharing our experience. One thing I've noticed, especially in working with clients with this, who I'm giving this, every new client who starts with me, I give this to right away. And what I've noticed is I've learned a lot about how to change my practice based on what people have shared. So the main thing in terms of our form will be sharing in small groups and then sharing in the large group where I can help you refine the practice. Kind of like Doshin working with you, I'm sure, as after he presents some theory, we'll do quite a bit of practice. And let's see. The course will cover things that you can go deeper into. So if you're interested in a particular topic, such as your own attachment style, there are 4 of them, which I won't get into tonight, but I will give you a different bit of theory. But if you're interested in your particular attachment style, I'm going to guide you to resources in between that you can be working with some of Daniel P. Brown's work, taking his attachment course concurrently with this. And there'll just be lots of room to dive in on your own to this subject matter. So primarily, I'll just be giving a little guidance and mostly an experiential. And the one thing I want to say about how this has really changed how I look at the kind of meta view of human development is that we tend to look, and this is a generalization, it may not be true of you, but we tend to when working with the egoic conditioning, we tend to first stumble on shadows, which are, cognitive um, functions, or hidden material that needs to be pulled up that way. And then we see that um, oftentimes shadows are driven by traumatic material, and often even below that, attachment issues. And I don't know if that's exactly how Doshin is still teaching that, or whatever. It doesn't matter either way. But what I'm saying is, I think we normally do that in kind of an involutionary way. We start at the kind of higher forms of development in psychotherapy, or any kind of psychotherapeutic process, and then we drill our way down to the attachment issues. And this protocol has really taught me to look at that completely upside down. Is that, to the degree that we can tolerate it, if we can work with the attachment level first, what I've noticed in my own experience and working with people is that when some of that attachment material gets addressed through something like addressing the needs at the attachment level, then that starts to ripple up through the levels of development, up through the traumas and up through the shadows. So it's kind of changed how I look at psychotherapy completely. That while we're drilling down, we can also be drilling up. We can be doing the evolution as well as the involution. And I found it really moves things along more, thoroughly, just depending on what our systems can tolerate, or what's needed. And so that's the main flip for me, is why not start working with the lowest levels of development that we can find, and work directly with the needs, the attachment needs that weren't met, that kind of started the trajectory of our character, our ego, etc., depending on how you want to look at it. Daniel P. Brown says very clearly that all future development is based on what happened in the attachment stage, which is kind of 0 to 2, 0 to 3 years of age. And so I'm looking at it that way. And so I'll talk a little bit about how the practice came about, as I understand it, how he developed it. And then I want to talk a little bit about the practice itself and how to practice it. And then I want to just get going into the practice, if you'll join me. And so Daniel P. Brown is a clinical psychologist and a research psychologist, and he is an attachment expert. He's been doing psychotherapy for over 40 years. And he also testifies in cases of sexual abuse scandals and high profile cases. He's brought in as an expert in attachment in general. And he is also a Mahamudra meditation master. So he's quite a gifted person. And while translating or transferring, say, the Tibetan practices of Mahamudra to the West, what he noticed was that one type of practice, which is called common humanity practice, which is sort of addressing, it's a visualization addressing interconnection, how people are ultimately interconnected. We're not separate. That in Tibet, that was done by visualizing the cherishing mother, and you used your own mother. Like everyone, say, collectively in Tibet agreed that the cherishing mother archetype, say, best represented the, unconditional love that reveals the common humanity between us. And when he brought that to the West, he found people were getting really tripped up on it because we have very ambivalent feelings towards our parents, especially our mother, in our culture. And integrally speaking, this is not Dan Brown speaking, this is me speaking, but that, traditional cultures are going to be much more child focused at the attachment level. And as we move into modern and postmodern parenting, a lot starts to get missed in terms of the actual child-centric focus. A lot of the delight in parenting may be taken out in favor of doing a good job as a parent, but maybe not enjoying parenting as much in some cases, or not attuning because we're so overwhelmed and so busy. So he noticed that the translation of that practice, the common humanity practice, actually wasn't working at all because of the ambivalence. And then I assume, he didn't say this, but I assume that he started to make the connection that the attachment system in the Western mind was often a cause of a lot of suffering. And so he started working with his patients with the ideal parents protocol that he developed, and also was using it in a different way for the project of enlightenment. And so that's the kind of background. And I'll begin. So tonight's piece that I want to give you is just a little bit on the 5 conditions of healthy attachment. And Doshin may have mentioned this in his teaching. I know he was teaching it a lot in the past, and I'm not quite sure what you cover now, Doshin, but the 5 conditions, or I call them buckets of healthy attachment, secure attachment, of which, by the way, statistically speaking in America, more than half of us are securely attached. In other words, we did basically get what we needed. And that doesn't mean the ideal parent's visualization isn't for you. Like, there's so much more that this can do in terms of meeting deeper needs. And then less than half of us fall into 3 other categories of insecure attachment. And so one, just be forewarned that, we tend to talk in psychological terms and often start to wonder, well, which type am I? And did I get what I need? And oftentimes assume we didn't get what we need, and can even become triggered by just the material coming down. And so I'm just aware of that, and I don't know many of you. And so I just want to just let you know, I'm going to talk about these things, and maybe best just not to make any assumptions for tonight, and see where it goes during the visualization. So the visualization itself is going to talk about the 5 conditions of healthy attachment. And the first one is safety and protection. And he's going to ask you to visualize a scene where you feel completely safe and protected. And this is the first one for good reason, because even animals protect their young, and so some things we know that when people had like traumatic things happen in their household when they were young, according to Brown, getting through the trauma is one thing, but actually getting through the material of the person who didn't protect us from that trauma is even harder to work with. So if we weren't actually safe, and we often walk around knowing we don't feel safe, but if we didn't get a basic sense of safety and protection, that's really going to be a challenge that we'll work with. We'll probably feel unsafe quite a bit in our life and may or may not even know it. So that safety and protection is the first one. And he's going to ask you to visualize a scene. And I'll tell you a little bit more how to do that before we get into it. But basically, you're really going to create a scene, because imagination creates new possibilities for what you did and didn't get. And it's actually something I'll be talking a lot about in the group, that this is profound, is that when a need wasn't met, we generally go on some kind of freezing of reality that this is the way it is. And so we don't have any choice point. We don't have the awareness that we could have made another choice to get what we want, for example. And so the imagination itself, the ability to visualize something different, is actually a major developmental move in its own right. Just the ability to bring on the capacity to visualize is a major developmental move into integral thinking, actually. And so I'll talk more about that in the course too. But the first one is safety and protection. And the second one that he's gonna say, now drop that scene. And now we're gonna move into another scene. And it's a scene where you feel completely attuned to. And what he means by attunement is that you feel known, that you feel seen, and that you feel like the ideal parent, the imagined mother, imagined father, are completely present with you, that you know they're completely present. Brown says that it's almost and maybe worse for parents to be present with their kids and not present than to be completely absent. Like, the message we give a youngster and each other when we're not present with each other in relationship creates all kinds of stories about who we are, and it would be actually better to not have that encounter, is what he says. The other part of attunement, he'll even go into a second scene with attunement, which is that, good parents are attuned to the inner state of the child, and they actually wonder aloud, I wonder if you're feeling happy. I wonder if you're feeling sad. I wonder what's going on in there. I wonder what you're thinking. And this gives the capacity later on in life to have a metacognitive structure and awareness of what we're thinking and feeling. So this comes online quite young. It's taught quite young by the wondering of the inner state from the parent. And the third one is he'll ask you to create a scene about soothing and affect regulation. And so it's very important that parents soothe their child when they're upset. This teaches the child to self-soothe later in general. So that soothing often looks like touch. It doesn't have to look like touch. It could just be words in your scene, but you imagine yourself being upset about something, and you bring that parent in a way that gives you the medicine for soothing. And that then, like I said, brings the capacity later on to know what soothing feels like, to know what to do when we're upset. And let's see, the fourth one is a really important one that often gets missed in Western culture, which Brown calls expressed delight or expressed joy in parenting. It's the sense that whatever we're doing, our parents are absolutely enamored with us, and they are delighted that we are there, and we are the center of their universe in some way. It's not enough to just do a good job of parenting. It's really important that parents really enjoy the process of parenting. And Dan's research is showing that that particular one, when that's not met, leads to low self-esteem, actually. and narcissistic character traits. So I'll talk more about that in the course too, but that's a big one that may be missing often in the West, just due to the busyness and the kind of maybe orangeness of modern parenting. You know, it's treating our children a bit more like its or objects rather than an I-thou connection. And the fifth one is very important as well. It's fostering self-development. So it's actually seeing what is unique in each child and really encouraging that developmental process from the attachment phase on up through, you know, through the later years. It's the sense that the parents are for you and they're for your exploration and individuation. So they give you just the right amount of space to explore, but not too much space to explore where you don't feel safe. And they're kind of always negotiating that. And as Dan says, they're always your greatest fans. They, you know, they encourage you to make mistakes. They encourage you to really find yourself. That's the fifth bucket. So are there any questions about that part first? And then I'll just do a final, just some final instructions before we move into the protocol itself. Okay. So I'm not seeing any hands, so I'll just keep rolling. So just some guidance and some instructions in how to do this effectively. First of all, really be patient. This takes a lot of time to get the hang of. It can often take a couple weeks before you feel like you're even benefiting. And by checking in with me weekly, I'll actually be able to show you ways that you are benefiting that you may not know. You know, it takes a little. It's very sneaky how it works. And so, be patient. And the first point is to be very specific. You're going to create parents, and these parents, you know, will be with you maybe for the rest of your life. These aren't you're not using your real parents. We're actually asking you to kind of drop the memory of them. Even if you feel like you had a good relationship with them, we're creating ideal parents. We're using the imagination to create the medicine for exactly what we need. And only we know what we need. So your ideal parent is going to be very, very unique to you. And, you know, craft a face if you can. Craft a body type that is nurturing to you or feels strong to you or whatever you need. You know, what are they wearing? How are they crouching next to you? Are they standing tall above you? Are they together? Are they apart? Really be specific about what you want, and also be specific about where you're placing the scene. So the second point is to do your best to make it first person. In other words, if this is you, he's going to ask you to, you know, you're you as a child, and do your best to be receiving the idealized parent from a first person perspective. So sometimes we could be like looking down on, and that's all fine, but doing our best to actually receive what that is in a really visceral way. Now, some people are more auditory. In other words, there's more like language going on in the visualization between you and the parents, and that's fine. Some people are more visual. It's just like seeing the actual perfect mother's face is enough to make you feel safe or attuned to. You know, just like the actual visual is very strong. And for some people, it's very kinesthetic. So you'll feel the safety in your body, you know, which is ideal. Or you'll feel the attunement in your body. You know, any of those is fair game. So, you know, you'll find your way through that. And then the other thing, and this may address a little bit of what you were saying, Janelle, is it's really important to not make these parents a competition or a correction for your real parents. You're not, it's a visualization. It's not a going back into the past and making your parents better. It's oftentimes feeling an attachment wound. So you might have a memory of, say, not being seen. And it could bring up all kinds of longing, say, to be seen. And so, maybe tears come, for example. But that is the attachment system coming online. That's a good thing. That we want that kind of longing for something else. It's not to correct your parents. It's to correct your attachment system. Just be really clear on what the intention of the visualization is. It's not to fix your parents or to make better parents and your parents worse. It's just to give it's to give yourself the medicine you need, is really ultimately what the visualization is about. Okay.